Sorry, this one's a little bit later. I had niece duty. Uncle Fufu had a fun little night with his nieces, so didn't get a chance to post my Friday recap. Also, was late for the Husky recap as well, but wouldn't trade it for the world. Being an uncle is the best. I'm sure being a parent is great too, and something I want to do someday, but uncle duty, pretty great. You know what else was pretty great? The Kraken this week. Now, they do lose one game, but they win 2 of 3. They win 3-2 over the Islanders. They win 3-0 over the Nashville Predators, and in between they have a 2-0 loss to the New York Rangers. Before we get into the good and maybe a smidgen of bad for the week, let's thank Simply Seattle, the very best in Seattle sports gear. Great stuff for the Kraken, of course, but the Seahawks, the Huskies, the Mariners, Kraken, which I already said, Storm, Sounders, you can find it all at simplyseattle.com. And use code MOLLYWOP15 to save 15% off your order. MOLLYWHOP15. Link in the description. Thank you so much, Simply Seattle. And thank you to everyone who checks out Simply Seattle. All right, let's just get the negative out of the way. And it's a very small one. Just not enough great offensive chances created against the Rangers. And, Jonathan Quick played well. Jonathan Quick certainly played well. But I think it's fair to say that the Kraken did not have their best offensive game. And, it's disappointing just because they've been playing so well, and it would have been great to get a win against a team like the Rangers in the middle of this. But it's an understandable loss, even at home. The Rangers are really good. 11-4-1 on the year at the time. I don't know what the record is right now. Probably should. Doesn't matter. Just wasn't a great game. Beniers didn't play very well. Burakovsky didn't have a great game. Brandon Tanev, who was kind of due for a not so great game, didn't play at his best. They just didn't have it. They didn't have it offensively. And on top of Jonathan Quick playing well when they did create chances, they didn't play great. Now, it's disappointing too also because, yes, Grubauer gives up the 2 goals, but I thought he played very well. Very, very strong game from Grubauer. Yeah, that's a game they probably should have won too. Because yes, the Rangers are better. I don't think there's any question that the Rangers are a better hockey team. But if you only give up 2 to the Rangers, you should win. Or at the very least, you should come out of there with a point. So not getting that point is a little disappointing. Especially because it ends your win streak as well. But it's not the worst loss. It's not even close to the worst loss. It's not the worst loss they've had so far. It won't be the worst loss going forward. There will definitely be worse losses. That's how professional sports work. So that first game, let's get into the positives now, against the Islanders was an awesome, awesome game. And it's the type of game that reminds me why I love hockey. And it's interesting. Somebody asked me on Blue Sky, follow me on Blue Sky at Crawford Chris V, if I'd ever covered hockey professionally. And the answer is no. I've never done it for NBC Sports, never did it for ESPN or anybody else like that. I've never covered hockey professionally, but it was a nice compliment. Shout out to my buddy Brian. But I've always loved hockey. Since there was no team in Seattle, as you know, I fell in love with the Detroit Red Wings. And I know a lot of you hate the Detroit Red Wings. That's totally fine. I loved them. I loved watching Stevie Y play, Fedorov, Chris Osgood in goal, and Dominic Hasek, who just an unreal player. I fell in love with them. And I also had a friend who was a fan of the Colorado Avalanche, and they had a big rivalry. So kind of made it fun. But I always have loved hockey from afar. But obviously having a local team to root for has taken it to another level. But I'm always amazed by how many people don't like hockey, because it just feels like, subjective, acquiring tastes and all that stuff. it's hard for me to imagine if you're paying even remotely close attention to the game, how you couldn't love hockey because it's such a fascinating sport. It's such a fast paced sport. But if you're really paying attention, it's not hard to understand what's going on. The one thing I struggle with a little bit is line changes. Like, not so much when the line is coming in, but actually, yeah, it's when the line is coming in. I understand that you have to make those changes. I understand that the best players play a third to 40% of the game. Sometimes it's hard for me to see that line change happening. And I'm always appreciative when I get something on TV that tells me that it's taking place. I can usually tell who it is on the ice, but it's nice to know. And I still struggle with it a little bit. But if you're paying close attention to the actual game, I think it's actually a pretty easy one to get. But there are a lot of people who really don't like it, and good for you. I think it probably has more to do with the fact that you've just never watched it, but totally understand. But this was a good hockey game between, the Islanders aren't a fantastic team, but a solid hockey team. Had a little bit of bad luck so far in terms of overtime, but there's talent there. And Shesterkin is a very good goaltender, which is actually, I think, one of the big takeaways there is that you're able to get 3 against somebody like him. Yanni Gourde, I thought, played his best game as a Seattle Kraken this year. Not best overall, but really strong game from him. Turbo continues to just be an offensive weapon. It's amazing the run that he's been on. A nice assist from Cartier. Riker Evans, man, I know we've talked about him a lot, but I still don't think he gets nearly enough attention for how good he is. And I just think that there is so much upside in his skill set. So much upside. And, you're starting to see it. He played the second most minutes in that game, right behind Brandon Montour, who wasn't great, but does enough things that you can't really complain, especially in a win. But the defenders were really good in this game. Evans was good. Larson was good. Alexiak with the big goal. He's played much better since that slow start to the year, and they need it because he was a big part of their success leading them into the postseason. He and Larson look like a legitimate 1-2 punch. And having that back would be huge, would be really huge. This was a really good game, and Joey Daccord played a fantastic game as well. Fantastic game. Not as good as the game we're going to talk about in a sec, but this was just a good old-fashioned, really good hockey game between 2 evenly matched hockey teams. And when you get 2 evenly matched hockey teams, there's not many sports better. It's not my favorite sport. Don't get it twisted. I love the Kraken, but it's not my favorite sport. Baseball's my favorite sport, and I would probably put hockey third. I rotate a lot between hockey, basketball, and football, which one's my favorite, but I love all of them. I love golf. I love tennis. I love handball. If there's ever a chance to talk about handball on this channel, you bet your sweet bippy I'm going to do it. I should have done recaps for Mile Wide during the Olympics. And then the win over the Predators, outside of, I think, the 8-2 drubbing, was probably their most complete game. I just loved everything about this game. Starting with Daccord, who is just an absolute stud. 4 power play saves, obviously the shutout. I mean, he is just he's a really good goalie. A really, really good goalie. And it's nice having a competent backup in Grubauer, but he is the backup. And we talked about this last week. It's so nice to see that the Kraken have made that. This is not a timeshare. This is a 2-to-1 split, and I'm totally fine with that. Maybe as we get deeper, it'll be a little bit more towards Daccord, and I'm fine with that. But for right now, what they're doing, A-okay. A-okay. Beniers doesn't get any points in that game, but I thought he played a fantastic 16 minutes. Same with Borkstrand, similar amount of time. Schwartzy with the couple of assists. I'm going to call him Schwartzy because he can do it. Chandler Stephenson, who has just been such a great distributor of the puck early on. And Brandon Montour as well. You know, Brandon Montour gets a goal and an assist in this game. Their ability to distribute the puck has just been huge. Huge, especially over these last 6, you know. And, you know, maybe not as many points for those guys, but you just, the eye test of those guys, they didn't have those guys last year. They thought Matty Beniers, I think, was going to be one of those guys. And I still have a ton of faith in Matty Beniers. Want to see the biscuit going in the basket. We all do. But I still have a ton of faith in him. And, you know, but right now you can't rely on him as those guys. You can rely on Chandler Stephenson and Brandon Montour to be those guys. They're not superstars. Of course they're not. But they're really good hockey players. And you can worry about their cap problems later. Teams figure it out. Smart organizations figure it out. If those contracts end up being bad towards the end, so be it. They need the offensive help now. They need the defensive help now as well. So, yeah. And then finally, the Kraken reacquire Daniel Sprong, and it's awesome to see that he got a goal in that game. I thought letting Sprong go was one of the true mistakes that the Kraken made. He's not, we talked about it. He's not an elite player, but he is somebody, as my buddy Ian Furness talked about, he's somebody who can finish the puck. He can finish and score, and Kraken don't have a lot of those guys. They just don't. But Spronger can do that. I was super excited to see a Spronger donger. It's been a while. And, you know, he had a solid season for Detroit. Wasn't getting a ton of run with Vancouver. Made a ton of sense to bring him back in. Ton of sense. And it was awesome to see him contribute pretty early. He's played 3 games so far. Gets that goal. I think he'll be a helper. I absolutely think he will be a helper. So, yeah, good week. Got some more. They're going to be playing tonight against the Kings in Ponzi Scheme Arena. And then who else do they play? They get Anaheim for 2, and then they'll play San Jose on Friday. So I'll wait until after that game against San Jose to record. Kind of an interesting one. They get LA, 2 against Anaheim, 2 against San Jose. Should be a good week. Would sure appreciate you hitting like, subscribe. Just really appreciate everyone who checks out these videos. They're not getting a ton of hits, but the people who are hitting the buttons seem to like them and makes me feel good. So thanks so much. Back with a bunch more next week. Go Kraken.